Five may not separate truma, but if they did separate, their truma is truma. He who is mute, drunk, naked, blind, or about carry may not separate truma, but if they separated truma, their truma is truma. One may not separate truma by measure, by weight, or by number, but he may separate from what has been measured, weighed, or counted. One may not separate truma in a measuring basket or hamper, but he may separate in them half or a third of their volume. One may not separate truma in a seah half full, for half of it is a measure. Why do we say not to measure? Why do we say not to measure by weight or by?
Okay, trauma has to be taken. Let's just see. In so yeah, if you take a look in the first line of the Kati of Ein Torah and Lavamida, etc., it says Birushalmi Samchu Dinze Alakasu V'nechshav Lachem Trumaschem B'machshava Tatorem. Right, by thought, you give truma by thought. In other words, by estimate, and you're not allowed to take truma by measuring.
It has nothing to do with, and it doesn't have anything to do with the fact that we have in a Mishnah where you don't come in and say, give me a bunch of eggs, or give me, eggs are counted, correct?
Right.
Right, eggs are counted. Then we have other produce, which is not counted when we say, give me
Yeah, that's right. So right. So there are different ways of measuring different types of produce, and what this mission is telling us that you can't use any of them on truma. That it's done by estimate. It's you. I think because my ikar adin, you have the shear for truma is unspecified. So you can't really go wrong as far as the Torah din is concerned. Now, as far as the rabbinic law is concerned, we said that actually there is a minimum shear of truma which Chazal will cover, and we'll see that further in the Mishnahs. But I think in order to get that, you estimate how much is that percentage that you're supposed to give for truma.
So when we take lemons off the tree,
and
we have 10 lemons off the tree. My wife.
Look, what you can do is look. In any case, the lemons. It's not lemons are done by are generally done by weight, not by number. So all you can do is count the lemons. What you should not do is weigh the lemons and say, okay, well, I've got here 3 kilos of lemons, so let me just see, 1% of that is, right. That's not the right way to do it. What you do is you estimate and make sure that you've covered your minimum. And if you've got 20 lemons off your tree, then certainly one is going to be more than 1%. Or if you want to even cut it in half, even half a lemon is more than 1%.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, we finished?
Okay.
We finished. One may not separate truma from oil for olives, which are due to be crushed, or from wine for grapes that are due to be trodden. But if he did separate, his truma is truma, but he must separate again. The first by itself renders meduma, and the one is liable for it to be added fifth, but not for the second.
Okay. The Tormin shemen al zaysim hanichbashim. So what you can do is separate oil as truma that will exempt olives that are due to be pickled, as opposed to olives that are going to be pressed. Hold on a second. Okay, sorry, I'm back with you. Right, so now what you can do, we said you can't take oil as truma for olives that are about to be pressed. And the reason we said was because we want to make sure that the owner presses his olives in Batara. But if they're going to be pickled anyway, then we're not going to be so much bit about it. Okay. The yain shel anadim lasos and simukim, and the same applies to taking from wine for grapes that are going to be turned into raisins, or even in both cases that are just going to be eaten the way they are. Okay. So what's the difference of why can you do this? Because in both cases it's nigmara malachtan. You finished the malacha on both cases. So each one is even though they're coming out in different types of product, they nonetheless both fall into the category of things that are ready, that have finished processing. Taram shemen al zaysim la'achila, v'zaysim al zaysim la'achila. Okay, so if you have somebody who, in all these cases of somebody took oil on olives that are going to be eaten, or olives for olives that are going to be eaten, yain shel anavim la'achila, or the corresponding cases with grapes, so wine for grapes that are going to be eaten, or grapes anavim ala anavim la'achila, grapes for grapes that are going to be eaten. All of these cases, you're allowed to take truma from the one on the other. Now he looks and he changes his mind. Nimlach ledorchan. Now he says, oh, you know what? I don't need this many things to eat. I want to turn these ones into oil. Ein tzarich litshon is fine. So even though he couldn't do that lechatchila, if he had in mind in the first place to press them, then he was not allowed to take oil as take oil as truma for the olives that are still going to be crushed. But if he had in mind at the time that he was going to eat them, and he took truma for them as eating olives, and then later he said, you know what, I actually want to press these olives, that's fine. But Diavad, he's allowed to do that as long as he's not trying to cheat the system.
Right.
Okay. Remember, the only reason that they did this was because they wanted to make sure that his wine press and that his olive press would both be done batara. But what, it's already after the fact. He's taking truma. Okay, now he wants to go ahead and press them. He's allowed to, and there's no need to take truma from them again. Okay. Mishna Yud gives more of a general rule of this. Ein tormin midavash nigmar malachto al davash lo nigmar malachto. You cannot take truma from something that is not finished processing on something that is finished processing, and not vice versa. In fact, if you have two things that have not finished processing, you can't take truma from one on the other even. The point is that truma has to be taken after nigmar malachto. It's got to have finished its processing in order to take truma. So if anything involved has not finished its processing, then you're not allowed to take truma at this point because it's not ready. The im tarmu trumas and truma. However, if they went ahead and did it, nonetheless, the truma is valid. Now, this statement over here seems to be in contradiction to what we learned a couple of Mishnayos ago, which is that in Mishna Ches, which you just did chazar on today, ein tormin shemen al zaysem anechtashin, that you're not allowed to take truma from oil on olives that are going to be pressed. And if he did it, but the avad yachzor v'yitron, then he has to go back and take truma again. So so it seems to be in contradiction, but the resolution for that is that Mishna Ches is talking specifically about olives and grapes. Again, because of that reason that we said before, that we wanted to make sure that when he presses his olives and his grapes, that must be done batara, which is something that we're not so makpid on when it comes to lemons or apples or whatever else that he's going to be taking truma from. So if he's finished if he squeezed lemon juice and he's not supposed lechatchila to take lemon juice and give that as truma on his unsqueezed lemons. But if he did it, it's okay because we're not all that makpid about squeezing lemon juice batara.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Perek Beis. Ein tormin mitahor ala tamei. V'im tarmu trumas and truma. Okay. So now we have another hakpada over here that even if you have two foods, the two types of produce that they've finished the malacha, if it's one, let's say it's two piles of grain, but one pile of grain somehow became tamei. Let's say it got wet, or and somebody touched it. Okay, so now it's become tamei. Now you're not allowed to use the tahor pile and say, okay, well let me exempt the tamei pile over there by taking truma from this pile over here, because then I can take all this truma, it'll be tahor truma, and I can give it all to the kohen, and then I don't have to worry about tuma and tara or anything like that. So you'd think that maybe this would be a good idea. But the Mishnah is telling you, no, you can't do that. Now, what's the reason for this? Is that there's another din in Truma that we'll learn, is that Truma has to be taken min hamukaf, which means from what is currently present. So you can't take Truma and say, oh, I've got a pile of Truma, I've got a pile of a grain over here, and I've got another pile of grain in my storehouse. Let me take some Truma from here and exempt what's in the storehouse. That's not called min hamukaf. It's not what's present. Mm-hmm. So you have to take Truma from what is actually physically present in front of you. Now the concern is that if you have a pile of Truma of Tameh and a pile of Tahor, and you want to take from the Tahor on the Tameh, then they have to be min hamukaf, and then they're going to come together and touch, and then the Tameh and the Tahor will become Tameh, which we don't want. Okay, so they will go there and say you're not allowed to do that. Okay, but if you nonetheless went ahead and did it, okay, what's done is done. We hope you didn't get things tamei in the meantime, but there's no need to repeat it. It's not like the Truma was possible. Be'emes amru. Now, whenever you hear be'emes amru, this is like halacha l'moshe Sinai. This is going to be the actual din. Okay, ha'igel shel devela shenitma miktsasor. So there's pressed fig cakes that we talk about. I don't know if such a thing exists nowadays, but the way they would have figs is they would take them and press them together and make a big cake, which would preserve for a lot longer. And the way that they would make things stick together is they would use the juice from the figs themselves. Okay, and that would be used to moisten it and make it sticky and press it together. Now, what do we know about fruit juice? Fruit juice is not machshir l'tumah. Right. So if, let's say, one part of the fig cake got wet and somebody tamei touched it, then it doesn't transmit tumah to the rest of the fig cake because it's only bound together by juice, and the juice doesn't transmit the tumah. Okay, so only the portion that was touched is the part that becomes tamei. So therefore, so now if this hasn't had truma taken out of it, so somebody can say, okay, well, I know that corner where I've designated, I'll do a little scratch around the corner to say where it's become tamei, but I'll take truma from the other side of it for the tamei part and to exempt it, and that is 100% fine because now you don't have this concern of they're going to touch and. Because they are touching, but the truma is not. The truma isn't going to be conveyed, so this is okay. V'chein aguda shel yarak. Similarly, with a bundle of vegetables, remember if you have a bunch of let's say a bundle of spinach leaves or something like that, and one of them became tamei, it doesn't transmit truma to the others unless there's water in between. Okay, so you can take truma from the bottom one on the top one. Okay. And similarly, a pile of grain where, let's say, one corner of it became tamei, but the rest of it is not susceptible. So once it's already in this case, you can separate your truma from the tower part and the tamei part. Hayu shnei igulim. However, if you have two fig cakes, shtei agudos, or two bundles of vegetables, or shtei arimos, or two piles of grain, achas tamei achas tahora, one tamei and one tahor, lo yisro mizel zeh, you cannot take truma from one on the other. Okay, so that fits in with what we said in the beginning of the Mishnah, is that in this case we don't allow you. It's only in the case where it was inevitable, it had already happened that half of the pile became tamei. So then you can take from the tahor on the tamei. But if they're two separate things, you can't take from one on the other. Are you clear on that?
Rabbi Eliezer has a different take on it.
Rabbi Eliezer Omer, Tormi min atar ala tamei. He says, meh, I'm not choshesh for this. People can be careful about if they already know one is tahor and one is tamei, so they'll be careful not to touch them. Yeah, beseder. Okay, but halacha ein halacha ka Rabbi Eliezer. Okay, we still don't allow you to take truma from tahor on tamei.
When they make these fig cakes, they just put the figs together next to each other, and the juice would act as a binder.
Yeah, the juice would act as a binder, and they dry it out.
So I was thinking that they weren't worried about any bugs.
So this is another fascinating discussion about the fact of bugs in figs, because figs are just like permanently infested, and no matter what you do, they remain they're almost always infested. There are a couple of criterium over here. One, if you actually brave enough to follow the halacha, bugs that never that where the eggs were laid inside the fig, and they hatched inside the fig, and they've never left the fig. It's not called sheretz hasharetz ala aretz, right? The isser is something that crawled on the ground. These things never came out of the fruit, and therefore technically they are actually kosher. Okay, that's one thing. The second thing is the Aruch HaShulchan. The Aruch HaShulchan has a great bit of halacha on bugs, saying, look, the whole reason why we're so makpid on bugs, because normally we'd say these things are batel, they're tiny, they're insignificant. It's like, you know, one drop of milk fell into a giant pot of meat soup. You know, okay, it shouldn't have happened, but you know, no, it's batel. The bugs should be batel as well. They're way less than 1 in 60. If you take a fig in your mouth and you pop it in, the bug is insignificant. Okay. So why are we choshesh for bugs? Because it's called a biria. Okay, we talk about it as a whole creature, and the thing of the whole creature is that it is significant be'etzem, even though it's less than the shiur. So if for example you have a even though something is less than a kazai, so let's say you've got these, you have in some cultures, especially the Chinese, will eat anything that ever moved, you know, and you find a little bug and say, "Oh, yummy, cockroach." Okay, and so if you had to eat a whole cockroach, even though it is less than a kazayas, you'd be chayav for it. Because it's a full creature. Okay.
Strawberry, make a strawberry shake out of it, and it gets all cut up. It's okay.
Now I'll get to that. Okay, but the Aruch HaShulchan points out that the teeny little bugs, the teeny little ones that we, whatever he says, those things are so insignificant. Nobody would ever choose to eat one of those things. It's not something that any culture in the world would say, "Here's a thrip." You know what thrips are. The things that you find, the little teeny little things that you find on lettuce. Here's a thrip. Oh, yummy, says the Chinese guy. There's a thrip. I want to eat it. He's not going to care about it. Even the Chinese guy is not going to care about it. Okay, so he says it's so even that is insignificant. He says that the Aruch HaShulchan, the din of beria, doesn't apply at all. And really it should be batel. So he says what you should do is, if you can. If whatever you can do to remove the bugs, you should do. If it's not such a major tircha to check your lettuce and make sure that there aren't any bugs in it. But if there are, no. This is the Aruch HaShulchan. This is not a lightweight we're talking about over here.
Right.
Okay, so he says we're basically too stressed about bugs, and we don't need to be.
When I read, whenever I just forgot what it was. Oh my gosh, where we eat all the like Rosh Hashanah. I think it was Rosh Hashanah when there's a Rav that comes out with all the, is it Rav Frati or someone comes out with this whole list of how to clean the bugs. I mean, how to clean the fruit. Right. And you read that and you say, all right, just forget it. Forget the salad.
Yeah, exactly. I think Rav Vai is very extreme on his bug checking. That's his thing. He's very makpid on it, and if somebody wants to be machmir like Rav Vai, tavo aleim bracha. But according to the Aruch HaShulchan, there's no need to go to those extremes.
I think the first year or two we were here, my wife took a course. I think it was with a woman who was under his same, the same thing. And every week she would come back and say, "Just forget it. We're not eating this. We're not eating that." It was.
That's the thing. Is that you come up with negative consequences? Is that it actually, it can damage your enjoyment of life when especially like you love strawberries.
Right.
Strawberries are in our family are mamish a treat, and we get them for dessert on the Shabbos,
right,
and we share them out, and they're delicious. And And what do? We check them. We just we wash them well, cut off the tops, do a little surface check, and everything is fine. And we eat them. Come on, Sam.
Yeah, that's what we same thing. It's the same thing.
Right.
Figs also. Figs. I love figs. I just when I can't wait for when I'm getting Rosh Hashanah, I'm getting those figs. Then I open them up and I start looking and I get a magnifying glass. I said, what am I doing? I don't see anything moving here. I don't see anything at all. And
That's what I did. I took some figs and I checked them out, and I was so happy with them that I thought that they were completely clear, and I started popping them in my mouth. And then my daughter is taking a look at the water that I was washing them in, and she looks at the bottom and saw these little worms wriggling around in the water, like teeny little things that the Chinese wouldn't care about.
same with dates. The same with dates. The same.
Yeah.
All right. All right. Let's go on. Let's go on. Okay. So all right.
Shavias Teskemel.
Do they do the same thing in India, where they eat anything that moves?
No. India is exactly the opposite.
Really?
India, they won't eat anything that ever moved. That was I was joking with one of my Indian friends, because he's so racist. He completely hates the Chinese. I was saying, like, I understand why, because the Chinese are like, if it ever moved, I'll eat it. If that thing ever stops moving, I'll eat it. And the Indians, like, if that thing ever moved, I won't eat it.
I think Japan's the same way then as India. I don't think they eat just
I
anything.
don't know. I don't know anything about Japanese culture.
No. All right. And why did they say 3 countries? So that they may eat in each one until the last of it is gone. Reb Shimon says they spoke of 3 countries only concerning Judea. The other countries are like the King's Mountain, and all countries are as one in regard to olives and dates. One may eat on account of hefka, but not if guarded. Reb Yossi permits also if guarded. One may eat it on account of vetching and on account of dufra, but not on account of autumn grapes. Reb Yehuda permits if they are ripened before the end of the summer. If one preserved 3 vegetables in one jar, Reb Eliezer says one may eat it on account of the first, and Reb Yeshua says also on account of the last. Ram Gamliel says if a species is ended in the field, that species must be eliminated from the jar, and the halakha follows him. Reb Shimon says all vegetables are as one in regard to beer, and one may eat portalak until vetches have ended in the valley of Bet Natofa.
Okay. Kilayim Zain Ches.
A perforated plant pot renders forbidden in a vineyard, but one that is not perforated does not render forbidden. Reb Shimon, however, says both are unlawful, yet are not rendered forbidden. If one carries a perforated plant pot to a vineyard, it is increased by 1/100th, it is forbidden. Vineyard kalayim may neither be sown nor maintained, and it is forbidden to derive any benefit from it. Seed kalayim may neither be sown nor maintained, but is permitted to eat it, and of course to derive benefit from it. Any benefit that may be derived from kalayim garments, and it is only forbidden to wear them. It is permitted to wear kalayim animals, and it is only forbidden to breed them. Animal kalayim may not be paired one with the other. A domestic animal with a domestic animal, a wild animal with a wild animal, a domestic animal with a wild animal, a wild animal with a domestic animal, unclean with unclean, clean with clean, unclean with clean, and clean with unclean are forbidden to plow, to draw, and to drive. Okay. Okay, we are.
Yadayim Daled Vav.
This is Saducee said, "We have a complaint against you. Perushim, for you say that holy scrolls render tamei hands that touch them, and heretical books do not render tamei hands that touch them." Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai said that this is the only thing that we have against Perushim. A scroll of, sorry.
It's a question. Is this the only thing you have against us? Come on, you can do better than that.
Why? They say that the bones of a donkey are tahor, but the bones of Yochanan the high priest are tamei. They said to him, the tumah is on account of their affection, so that a person should not make the bones of his father and mother into spoons. He said to them, as regards holy scrolls too, their tumah is on account of their affection, but heretical books which are not held dear do not render tamei hands that touch them.
So it's interesting that Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai did not answer with the correct answer. That is not the reasoning, and the answer that they said is not the correct reasoning. He's just answering according to their logic. Say, okay, so if you think that's because of the fever, that's not the reason why a human body is tame. It's not so that you shouldn't make your parents' bones into cutlery. it's just it's just that there's a gezeres hakasov that the okay, but you can't expect you can't expect the tzdukim to appreciate the finer points of emuna. So he gives them an answer according to their level.
The Sadducees say we have a complaint against you, Perushim, for you declare as Tahor a stream of pouring liquid. The Perushim say we have a complaint against you, Sadducees, you rule Tahor a canal of water that flows from a cemetery. The Sadducees say we have a complaint against you, Perushim, for you say if my ox or my donkey causes damage, they are liable. But if my slave or maid servant causes damage, they are not liable. If I am liable for the damages of my ox or donkey, regarding whom I am not responsible for their mitzvos, it is not logical that I should be liable for damages of my slave or maidservant, regarding whom I am responsible for their mitzvahs. They said to them, No, you can say so regarding my ox and my donkey, but not which have no understanding. Understanding. That's wrong. Right? Yeah, but can you say so regarding my slave and maidservant who do have understanding? For if I anger them, he will go and set fire to someone's haystack, and I will be liable to pay. Galiant Saducci said, I have a complaint against you, Perushim, for you write the name of the ruler together with the name of Moshe in a bill of divorce. The Perushim say, we have a complaint against you, Galiant Saducis, because you write the name of the ruler together with the name of God in one column. Moreover, you write the name of the ruler above and the name of God below, as it is said, and Paro said, Who is Hashem, that I should heed his voice to send out Israel? And when he was smitten, what did he say? Hashem is the righteous one.
Again, it's one of those arguments where they're just kind of not really arguing. They're saying your argument is ridiculous. We say then the Torah shouldn't have written Paro's name before Hashem's name in the pasuk either.
Okay. We have Olios.
Yeah.
There are 248 limbs in a person, 30 in the foot, 6 per toe, 10 in the ankle, 2 in the leg, 5 in the knee, 1 in the thigh, 3 in the hip, 11 ribs, 30 in the hand, 6 per finger, 2 in the forearm, and 2 in the elbow, and 1 in the upper arm, and 4 in the shoulder. For a subtotal of 100 and 1 on one side and 101 on the other side, plus 18 vertebrae in the spine, 9 in the head, 8 in the neck, 6 in the chest, 5 in the genitals. Each of these limbs convey tuma via touching, carrying, or ohel. When is this so? When it contains sufficient flesh to heal, but if the limb does not contain sufficient flesh to heal, it conveys tuma via touching or carrying, but not via ohel. These convey tuma through ohel, a corpse, an olive volume of a corpse, an olive volume of a netzel, a ladle full of corpse powder. The spine and the skull are limbs severed from a corpse and a limb severed from a living body that have sufficient flesh to heal, a quarter cup of bones, even if it is less than most of the frame or less than the numerical majority. Most of the skeletal frame or the numerical value of the bones of a corpse, even if it comprises less than a quarter cup of bones, all of them convey tuma. How many bones are a numerical majority of the bones in a skeleton? 125. A quarter log of blood and a quarter log of death blood convey tumor if they are from one corpse. Rebbe Kiva says even if they're from two corpses. If all the blood of an embryo emanated, Rebbe Kiva says even a tiny amount conveys tumor, where as the sages say, only if there is a quarter log. An olive volume of morims, whether alive or dead, Rebbe Eliezer declares it tummy like the flesh of a corpse, but the Kekummans declare it tahor. The ash of cremated or corpses, Reb Eliezer says, is minimum measure to convey tumah in a quarter kav of ash, but some could come and declare it tahor. A little more than a ladleful of grave powder is tameh, and Reb Shimon declares it tahor. And a ladleful of corpse powder that was kneaded with water is not considered connected in respect to tumah.
Adios. I love Tess.
Okay, if one converts into a silver seller copper coins of Ma'aser Sheni, Beis Shammai says he exchanges copper coins for an entire seller, but Beis Hillel says a shekel's worth of silver and a shekel's worth of coins. Reb Meir says we may not deconsecrate silver and produce of Misa shiny into silver, but the Chachamim permit this. If one changes a silver seller of Misa shiny into copper coins in Yerushalayim, Beit Shammai says he takes charge for the entire seller in copper coins. But Beis Hillel says he takes change for one shekel of the seller in silver and for the other shekel of the seller in copper coins. Those who debate before this Chachamim say he takes change for 3 dinners of the seller in silver and for the remaining dinner of the seller in copper coins. Rabbi Akiva says he takes change for 3 dinners of the seller in silver, and for the 4th dinner of silver he takes a quarter copper coins. Reb Tarfon says for the 4th dinner he takes 4 aspers of silver. Reb Shammai and Shammai says he should leave the seller in the store and takes excessive amounts of food corresponding to it. With regard to a bridal chair whose spindles were removed, Reb Shammai declares it tamei, and Reb Hillel declares it tahor. Shammai says even the malbin of the chair is tamei. With regard to a chair that one affixed to a kneading trough, Beis Shammai declares it tamei. But Beis Hillel declares it tahor, and Shammai says even the chair made originally to be in the kneading trough is susceptible to tumas midras.
And Megillah.
There is no difference between the laws applying to a holiday and those applying to Sabbath, except the laws that pertain to food. There is no difference between.
By the way, and that is actually only according to Beis Shammai, because according to Beis Hillel, it's ochel nefesh and mitoch. Anything that's similar is allowed.
There is no difference between the laws of applying to Sabbath and those applying to Yom Kippur, except that the deliberate desecration of one is punishable by man, and the deliberate desecration of the other is punishable by karet. There is no difference between one forbidden by vow to have any benefit from someone else and one forbidden by vow to receive food from him, except for setting foot on his property. And utensils which people do not prepare food. There is no difference between vow offerings and gift offerings, except that concerning vows one is responsible for their security, but concerning gifts one is not responsible for their security. And there's no difference between a Zav who experiences 2 issues and one who experiences 3, other than bringing an offering. There is a difference between a confined mitzvah and a confined.
There's no difference between them other than.
You're right. I could have changed the halakha right there. There is no difference between a confined mitzvah and a confined mitzvah, except letting the hair grow wild and rendering the garments. And there is no difference between the laws pertaining to one who was pronounced cleansed after having been confined and those pertaining to one who was pronounced cleansed after having been confirmed, except for shaving and bringing birds.
Right, and we just learned this in this last week's parasha. All of these Mishna Zayin is all about all the things that we learned in Tazria Batzara.
Okay.
Okay.
But I don't know if you want to shut off the recording, so.